Perfect. All right, welcome everybody. And just like Allison said, Happy New Year. This is the first virtual tasting of 2022. And we are so excited to have Christian Pillsbury, the Pillsbury or Pillsbury?
Pillsbury, kind of halfway
Pillsbury.
between the two.
Yeah, exactly. Just,
Roll it. I'll answer to both.
Perfect. Awesome. Do you answer if I press your stomach? Do you giggle a little bit?
No, it's not nice. My brother was heavy set in school. He didn't have an easy time with that one.
Oh, you're right. That is not cool at all. Never mind. Bullying. Don't bully kids. Don't bully. So anyway, we're excited to have Christian from Eden Rift with us tonight. Of course, a little bit of housekeeping before we dive into our discussion. First and foremost, we're going to keep everybody muted. So if you have any questions for Christian as they come up, throw them into the chat. Allison and I will be monitoring that, and we will throw those into. We'll ask those questions as they come up. We're of course recording this, so we'll be sending out the link for that tomorrow. So keep an eye on that. Also, I discovered just last month, I can't believe I didn't know this already, but apparently if you're doing Zoom on your computer, you can actually rearrange the video squares using your mouse. So if for some reason Allison or Christian or I are not at the top of your screen, feel free to move us up there
or move us away from there if you want.
Yeah, you can do that as well. Whatever you like.
Chris, I just want to congratulate you that we are coming up on year 2 of anniversary of Zooming, and you finally figured that out.
I'm just afraid to touch anything for fear of it breaking or blowing up in my face. So that's why I did not know that. Perfect. So Christian, as we always do, let me begin by asking the most important question, which is, what is the best bottle of wine and less douchiest bottle of wine that you have ever had and tasted in your life?
Sure. Well, the reason for the douchey comment is I knew this question was coming, but I promised that I wouldn't say one of my own wines because that's literally the worst answer one can give to that question. It's so obnoxious.
It would not reflect well on you, yes.
Yeah,
it would also show how narrow your world is.
That's fair. That's fair. So now I'm pretty sure Allison's favorite wine is probably Eden Rift, but it's not mine. The best wine I ever had. So I've been fortunate to spend my life tasting amazing wines. I was a sommelier, I was an importer and distributor. I've traveled the world. I lived overseas for over a decade. I've been privileged, but the wine that, if you ask that question, the one that pops into my mind first is the wine that first showed me that wine was a living thing. And it was when I was maybe 22 years old. I just joined the wine business. I thought I knew a whole lot about a whole lot of things. And I took home a bottle of weird looking wine from a shop that I was working in. It was 1986, Coulis Clos de Sirah from Nicolas Joly, biodynamic producer from the Noir Valley. It's the vineyard appellation. And I took it, I didn't know what it was. It just looked cool. And I remember it was $49. So it was a big spend for me at the time. And I took it to a friend's house who was having a little gathering, and I popped it open in the kitchen, and I never emerged from the kitchen. I just sat and babysat that bottle, and I kept checking in on it. And every time I tasted it, it became something different, something new and something profound. And every avatar I went through was equally delicious as the one prior or more so, but it was never the same. And every wine I'd ever had to that point had been consistent. And I learned, I think the consistency is not synonymous with good. Mm-hmm. Consistency is just consistent. And it's been one of those things I've had to try to learn over time.
And that's the one. That's what makes wine so interesting, is not only vintage to vintage, producer to producer is there that inconsistency, but block to block, bottle to bottle, sometimes, like you were saying, sip to sip, you'll have completely different flavors from that. And to me, that's what makes wine one of those things where even when you think you've learned absolutely everything, even if you have passed your master of wine courses with 100% efficacy, there's still something for you to learn, because every vintage is going to be different and new challenges.
Well, I think a lot of people come into the wine business thinking that they can control chaos and entropy. And all we can do is learn to ride them.
Right.
You know, you can control your response, you can control your vision, but you can't control anything else. And the wine is going to make the wine if you want to let it be its best self. You can dumb it down to be standard, but you can't dumb it down to be great.
I like that. I feel like that
Wow.
needs to be on a t-shirt or a bumper sticker.
You know, actually, to the point that you were saying about always exploring and new things and tasting and how the wine opened, I mean, that's kind of what this was in me finding you guys in learning about it, because who knows where the Cienega Valley is?
Raise your hand, other than Christian, if you know where the Cienega Valley is in California. I know we have some people
I wouldn't have
blocked out.
raised my hand 6 years ago.
Yeah, I too had that response when I was sent an email inviting me to come explore the Cienega Valley. It is part of the Central Coast. I flew into Monterey and it was about a 30-minute drive. I'll let Christian tell a little bit more about how he discovered it, but I just wrote a story about it that I'll share the link in a second, but it's just a really special place that if you've heard of Calera, if you're a big Pinot Noir drinker, you might have had Josh Jensen's Calera over the years. He's kind of the guy who put the flag in this area, but most people know Calera and they don't know Cienega Valley. So I think that with Eden Rift and what Christian's trying to do and other producers who are sourcing fruit from there, your next destination is going to be Cienega Valley. I'm telling you, after you try these wines.
Is there a question in there, Allison? No, I'm kidding.
No.
So can I make a quick suggestion?
Please.
Can I suggest we put some wine in a glass before we keep going on this topic? Would that be okay?
Yes, some of us are
All
already
right.
well
Sorry,
ahead of you. And
I just don't want to get ahead of myself.
No,
and,
no.
I'm thirsty.
And I believe, I mean, by my tasting, and Christian, tell me if I'm wrong because these are your wines. So, but
Right.
I imagine we'd start with the Valliant Pinot Gris. Is that kind of the one to start with, or I'm sorry, just the regular Pinot?
Yeah. So
Graces.
personally, I would start. Either one will work great. I was thinking I would start with the Chardonnay, but since
Okay.
you're on Pinot Gris, let me do Pinot Gris.
I got both. I got
Oh.
both, so we can do the Chardonnay.
So yeah, I just want to touch base on this. It's sorry, I'm going to Corv in it because we're opening a bunch of wines. I'm here by myself this evening, and so instead of getting absolutely schnockered with you guys, I'm just going to be sensible.
That's fair. Boo.
Although many are the evenings I've originally Corvined the bottle and then pulled the cork halfway through. So
It happens.
We generally prefer our guests to get schnockered with us, but that's all right. We'll make an exception.
okay.
This
I'm
time.
still drinking 4 glasses of wine with you just now.
It's true. It's true.
Okay, so now you were saying Cienega Valley is known for Calera for sure, and Josh Jensen, great friend of mine for 20 years, no, 24 years now. And he's retired, but the legacy that he built is still here. But beyond Calera, when you think about Cienega Valley, the word that should come to mind is limestone. There are only 2 places in California where you can get large deposits of naturally occurring limestone for viticulture, and those are Paso Robles, which is a little warm for Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, and the Cienega Valley. And so actually between us and Calera, the only thing that exists between the 2 of us is a limestone mine.
Yeah.
A
And
quarry.
I'll be honest, when I did not know it as the Cienega Valley, I had heard of the Cienega Valley before. I always thought it was somewhere in the vicinity of Monterey. And again, you are close to Monterey, but close to the coast.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I was familiar with the area because one of my winemaking idols from when I started drinking wine is Ken Volk. And he sourced a lot of what he calls his heirloom varietals, what I always call forgotten grapes, from that San Benito County, Cienega Valley
100%.
area. I know the Enns Vineyard and a few others that are in that area. Lime Kiln Vineyard, I believe, is in that same vicinity. So
Yeah. They're wonderful old vineyards. Enns, Wers, DeRose, Calera, of course, Eden Rift
DeRose as well.
Yeah, a lot of these guys. DeRose has Negrette, Pinot Saint George, Old Zin,
Yes.
very interesting wines, interesting grapes. Enns has some orange muscat, which is one of the most extraordinary grapes I've ever tasted. And some beautiful
Don't forget
things.
that Cabernet Pfeffer.
And Cabernet Pfeffer.
Cabernet Pfeffer,
Gotta have the
aka
Pfeffer.
Grover Doe.
Well, we've had debates about what Cabernet Pfeffer actually is. I think we're getting in the weeds here pretty early.
That's okay. We're known to do that.
Yeah.
They'll jump off if they're not interested. So we still got more people.
But
That's
going
good.
back to the olding, what was the big winery there? Was Almaden? Is that right?
Yeah. So well, let me give you a little arc of history, if you don't mind. I'll make it about 2 minutes. But basically, Eden Rift was founded originally in 1849. So that makes it the oldest operating vineyard in California. It was founded by Theodore Vacher, so he was a Frenchman. It was founded the year before California became a state, and the year that gold was discovered. And so he was a baker set to growing grapes. Started with mission grapes, discovered mission grapes were terrible, but the site was amazing. So he got on a ship and he sailed, which is a big undertaking before the Panama Canal. Sailed from Monterey to Toulouse, France, to buy grape cuttings. Came back and founded California's first plantings of Pinot Noir, which was called Black Pinot at the time, Trousseau, and Gray Riesling. I believe it's Gray Riesling. And so Trousseau and Riesling are not really that big a deal in California anymore, but people still grow Pinot Noir, oddly enough. So from 1861, we're Pinot Noir. And then, there are a series of owners, which I won't go into too deeply. We make it through Prohibition, continuing to produce through Prohibition when it's owned by a bank, making sacramental wine. And then from its sort of halcyon days are from Prohibition through Second World War. It's owned by a company called Edwin Valliant and Sons, Valliant Vineyards, which is where we get the name Valliant for our Chardonnay. We wanted to honor them. And then following the Second World War, there were some legal shifts that happened in California agriculture, which caused a huge roll-up. And so Almaden, Parmesan, Valliant, Martin Ray, all the biggies of the 40s, basically in 2 years, every high-quality vinifera producer in California was purchased by East Coast distribution concerns looking to shore up supply. So it's an old story, it's a new story, it's a private equity roll-up. In the 1940s. And so that's when Valliant Vineyards moves in, and what is ultimately Eden Rift, moves into becoming part of a larger company. It's run independently through the 50s. And then in the era of, nuclear power, tail fins on Cadillacs and TV dinners, big brands become a mark of confidence and quality. Artisanal brands means suspect garbage.
Right.
And so small brands cease to be useful in the United States, and everything in this holding company becomes Almaden Vineyards. And then their big competitor becomes Parmesan. They were not bottom of the shelf brands we think of now. They were absolutely top shelf at the time and commanded great price, great prestige. Almaden, just down the road from us, about a mile from where I'm sitting right now, built the largest winery under one roof in the world. They had the Guinness record for that. And they were the largest wine grape grower in California as well. And so basically they and Parmesan dominated the California wine industry for a period of time. And then in the, 70s, discovered it was a lot easier to make wine off the bottom shelf than the top shelf, gave up on quality. And then that was the end of what that was. So Hubline and the like, these companies kind of changed strategy, and the strategy gutted the brands, but made them a lot of money for a short period of time. So returns to private ownership in 89, and then we bought it in 16. They'd done a whole long period of doing a Calatal project. And our vision was to take America's oldest operating vineyard, and what I think is really something that deserves to exist, and perhaps one of its greatest vineyards, and to return it to its own steam, return it to a rudder that makes sense given its history. I didn't put my name on it. It doesn't really matter who runs it. It's really about whether or not this estate can sustain itself for another 170 years or whatever it's going to be.
Nice.
And one other really interesting thing, just to point out where it is, the Cienega Valley sits on the fault line. So the San Andreas Fault is right there, and some of the vineyards are on one side of it and some are the other. Christian, I don't know if you want to expand on that, because I think it's fascinating that you literally sit on a fault line and your house is still standing despite big earthquakes.
Well, and before we get to Christian, just for geography's sake, we can kind of lay this out. So to the north, you've got Salinas, I believe, is to the north, or is that?
So Salinas is basically due west of us.
Okay, Salinas is west.
And then from there, basically Monterey. So we're 20 miles from the coast. We are absolutely a coastal appellation. We've got the Gavilan Range, which is just between us and the water. So on the other side of the Gavilan Range, so I don't know, a couple of miles from where I'm sitting now, west, it's so cold, the only crops you can really grow are strawberries and artichokes. Mm. We are on the periphery of temperature for ripening grapes. We're closer to the water than anybody in Santa Lucia, or basically Monterey appellation, oddly enough. So it's a marginal climate. All we can grow is Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and the light. We're doing our best to try and experiment with Rhone varieties, but that has been suspect. So we'll see.
Have you tried some of the like Eastern French cooler stuff? Again, you mentioned Trousseau is a grape that originally founded there. Things like Mondouse and some of those.
Yeah, I don't know if I've got the stomach to try to break Ploussard for the American market. We give it a shot. Yeah. I don't know. No, I've got a little block of. I do believe in finding our natural parameters for what we can grow and what we can't. And so Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, I know we grow well. Right. Pinot Gris, I know we grow well.
Pinot Blanc,
Pinot Blanc, I could grow. Cabernet Merlot did not work well for us. That historically was on this property and never did well, because you could never harvest more than 1 out of 3 vintages being warm enough to get ripe enough to ferment. So we have a tiny little slot valley that's a little bit warmer than the rest of the estate. And so I put in Grenache, Syrah, Mourvèdre, because I really wanted to see what could happen. I love cool climate Rhone. Mm-hmm. And I think that I expect the Mourvèdre will fail. Yeah. But until we try, I don't know what our parameters are. And so that's it's like feeling around in a dark room. You got to find the wall somehow. Maybe you're going to smack into it with your face.
No, I could see the Syrah thriving, because it tends to do well in higher elevation and cooler climates. But you're right, Grenache and Mourvèdre is going to be a stickier wicket, I imagine.
And we'll get there towards the end. But fascinatingly, that you do Petit Syrah when you're talking Pinot Chard and Pinot Gris, which you can save the answer to that question for when we drink that wine.
Okay, I look forward to it. Okay, so anyway,
back to the fault line. So it's Hollister to the north, Salinas to the west, Piscinas to the east, and then just the San Joaquin Valley to the south.
So at some point you might ask what Eden Rift references as a name. And so Eden Rift is a name that I created because I want to describe this place across 2 parameters, right? One is historical and the other one is geological. And so on a historical perspective, Eden references John Steinbeck east of Eden. The small range where we find ourselves, the Gavilan Range, was sort of his happy place, just tucked up against Salinas where he lived. And when he wrote East of Eden, he writes in the preamble that the hills here were like the arms of a welcoming mother, rich with brown grass love. And I find that to be a wonderfully evocative way that California feels in the summertime. And it talks about sort of the culture that's been here. And then the rift references the fact that we're at the edge of a rift valley so we're like the last people on the Pacific plate. So if you go west, you get Korea. You go east, you get the end of my driveway. And so we've got
like
all this.
Sarah Palin, you can see Russia from your house.
I can see Russia from my house. And so we have we're on limestone and decomposed granite, this incredible dirt milkshake, because due to seismic activity, it's all those sort of formal layers have all been shattered. And it leaves amazing minerality in the wines, amazing mineral and soil available to the wines. But just on the road you drive in on, Cienega Road, that the appellation's named after, is on the fault. The DeRoses have a building, and they're my next door neighbor. They've got in their winery is built in the 40s. There are walls that are moving 2 directions that you can walk between, because they're on 2 tectonic plates. And they're literally a quarter mile from me. And then on the other side of the road from them is the American Plate, which has no sedimentary limestone, or no limestone. It's all basically sandstone and granite. And so it's an entirely different growing condition. And if you had a strong arm, you could practically throw to it.
And so when California separates from the rest of the US, you will be the last person. You will be on the side that floats away.
You will,
we're
but
swimming.
you will have beachfront property right there. So you've got a great house and a great driveway, which will become a dock, as we were talking about before. It will become a dock.
And then last thing is that the house where your tasting room is from
1906.
1906.
It was grown by a guy named, built by a guy named John Dickinson, designed by the architect Walter Burley Griffin. And so Walter Burley Griffin was Frank Lloyd Wright's partner in Chicago. And so Dickinson was a grain broker in Chicago who retired to buy a famous vineyard in California, which is kind of exactly what would happen now 100 years later. If he was a hedge fund manager, he'd be doing exactly the same thing. So same idea.
Only in Napa.
Hired Chicago's favorite architect, had him design the house here. The house that we're in is the only house Burley Griffin ever designed in California. And then immediately following this, he was tasked with designing the capital of Australia, Canberra. And so I think this was one of the last private residences he did in the United States before leaving and doing gigantic projects. And he's the father of the L-shaped floor plan and the carport.
Oh, interesting.
And the house was built before the big earthquake of 1906 and remains standing.
It did. Yeah, the foundation was sound. And being that the house is all timber, it vibrates, it shakes. I mean, I sit through earthquakes all the time. We're on a fault. Not a single picture in my house hangs straight. It's just the way it is.
Nice. So before we dive into the Chardonnay and kind of get to the nuts and bolts of it, I'm curious as to how you found this location, given your bona fides in the industry as a sommelier spending time in Europe. You know, when it came time for you to decide, okay, I'm going to get out of the business of selling wine and get into the business of making and then selling wine.
We stopped selling wine a long time ago.
Exactly. You know, how did you come upon such a, let's call it for what it is, a remote area like the Cienega Valley, only a handful of wineries there, certainly not, the prime time locale of Napa, Sonoma, Paso, even the Willamette Valley.
And plus the fact that Christian is a born and bred San Franciscan.
Yeah,
so. I am born and bred San Francisco.
Take us through your journey to finding and buying Eden Rift.
I'm going to take you back further than my journey because I think your premise is flawed.
Okay.
All right. You say we're in the middle of nowhere. I would say the middle of somewhere shifted. So when this place was founded, right, my first California ancestor arrived in Salinas. No, my first ancestor in California arrived in Salinas in the 1860s, 1870s, because this was the center of California economic activity.
Right.
San Francisco wasn't really a city yet, and Napa and Sonoma just didn't exist in any relevant way. Monterey was a deep water port, as was San Francisco, but Monterey had the fisheries, canneries, and was the state capital. And so this place was the center of everything. And there's a reason why Filippo Vache planted a vineyard here instead of Napa and Sonoma. And it's because Napa and Sonoma was a week's ride from anywhere. Mm-hmm. And this was not. This was close to market. And so that's a very cynical, way of thinking about it. But I just want to change your perspective a little bit around what's important. And Paso didn't exist at all.
Correct.
At that time, and it didn't really exist in any viticultural way, even in the 70s and 80s when Napa and Sonoma started to take off. So I think we have to look at a timeline for that. Now you asked how I found it. So I was based in Hong Kong, or based in France. Then I was based in Hong Kong. I was away from the US for about 11 years. And I'm a deep, passionate devotee of American wine, always have been. And I was doing all kinds of really cool stuff. I ran all the wine shops for Global Duty Free. And then from there, I went and launched Coravin for Asia Pacific and helped to run that company for a while. But the better I got at my work, the less I got to be around wine, which is theoretically the reason I was doing it was to be in the wine. And so one day I just, what I really want to be doing. And looking, it says my internet's unstable. That's probably farming.
No, it's okay. We can still hear you. You're good.
I hear you. Your lips are your lips are not matching.
Okay, great.
Must be one of them earthquakes up there.
Must be, yeah. Or the fact that I'm truly in the middle of nowhere, to your earlier point. And so
I'm never going to live that comment down.
I decided I decided that I didn't really want to, with Coravin, I didn't want to sell gadgets to department stores forever. As much as I love the product. I mean, I was flying, I opened it in 14 countries. I was flying all the time. I was having this amazing life with it. But it took me away from what I loved. And in this decade that we're in now, half of America's wineries will change hands, either because the families that started them are retiring and their children don't want to take over,
right.
Or actually that's the primary one.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of risk because wineries have become expensive. Wine has become a rich person's playground. I am not that rich person. And I came back and said, look, the only outcome for a winery is going to be private equity or a large corporate holding. And neither one of those allows for beauty or passion or the parts of the wine business that I love. And so I went and got some like-minded friends and said, let's do something about that. Let's not always focus on whether you should, I don't know, buy an investment apartment or something glamorous.
Right.
Instead,
Parking lots.
A parking lot or whatever. I don't like, these are some of my friends here. That's not my path, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately. But I came and said, look, let's all do this. Let's go and save something, right? Let's do something good for the subject that we love. And so I spent a year and a half sitting across the dining table from families that were debating, what do we do? Kids don't want to take over, or the kids want to take over but can't afford to pay the taxes if they don't sell the estate, or all these good old-fashioned farming questions.
Damn you, Prop 19.
And in Napa and Sonoma, that is a punishing equation, because if you do buy an estate in Napa or Sonoma, the chance of you making money are zero,
right?
Like kind of forever.
No, they become lost leaders for the trust fund and hedge fund communities, basically.
And I'm not throwing salt at Napa and Sonoma. I mean, I cut my teeth on those wines. I love those wines, and I buy those wines all the time as much as I can afford to. But that was going to be the reality. And I sat across from a lot of these families and got into deep discussions with a number of them, but it just never quite sat the way I wanted it to. And a friend of mine said, you got to see this place in Cienega Valley down in Hollister. And I go, I don't know. I've not heard of this place.
Right.
It's in the middle of nowhere.
It's in the middle of nowhere. True. It would be an accurate description to say it's in the middle of nowhere. It would be
an accurate description to say it's in the middle of nowhere. But I called my friend Josh over at Calera. I said, Josh, what's the story? What should I do? And he says, don't waste any time. You have to come down here. And I did. And I rolled in through those gates and I was just done. I'd spent a year and a half looking, and I closed that deal within 6 days, because I was like, this is everything it was supposed to be. This is everything we ever dreamed. This is everything that I love about wine, that I love about the wine industry, that I love about the history and the sense of stewardship. And it's so easy to craft a vision for what the past could provide the future, just by giving it the love and the energy that it deserves. And so that was the mission, and it was not a hard decision to make.
Yeah, no, I
there you
like
go. That's a really verbose story, so I apologize.
It was. That's all right. And no, it makes sense, and it does. I mean, it checks a lot of boxes because you have this amazing history in the area, but at the same time, you're really working with a completely unmolded piece of clay in terms of the knowledge of wine consumers, wine buyers, and whatnot. So, you could really be at the forefront of shaping what is the Cienega Valley and position it as you want as sort of the next wine region, the old wine, however you want to do that. So
it sounds ridiculous, but I really do believe that we're here in service of an estate like this.
Mhm.
And Allison, you've been here, you visited, you've met the whole team. I mean, there's a sense of service, there's a sense of stewardship that I don't find frequently in this business. And it comes from this place. It's not me. It just is what this place needs.
Christian's like the worldly city boy who moved into this small town. I mean, his winemaker, Corey Waller, grew up in that area. His brother, Mike Waller, is the winemaker at Calera. You've got so many like homegrown people that are there, living there. I mean, obviously there are others like who buy fruit, but you are the more worldly of the personalities there.
Yes, this is definitely one of the more thoughtful, kind of more philosophical virtual tastings we've had.
Sorry.
No. And we've had, we've had Larry Schaefer and William Allen and quite some deep thinking winemakers on with us. So this is fascinating. But before
you got to forgive me, I live in the country. The only people I can talk to are my dogs.
We're the
Chris, deep thinking, opinionated people.
Yes, that's true. That's true. So let's then now talk about your Chardonnay. Again, this is the Valliant Chardonnay. It's a 2017. And I know some people who will refuse to drink white wines, not in our group, but I know some folks who will refuse to drink white wines older than 3 years. They think that California whites there's a drop-off point after 3 years. But I mean, this one to me is holding up remarkably well for a 17. I mean, the color on it is still beautiful. Kind of take us through the production of this wine, where the grapes come from. Obviously, very cool climate, as you were saying, lots of limestone, I imagine.
And by the way, tasting this wine, I don't think anyone would guess that it's 5 years old, 4 years old. I mean, I would give it 2 years. It's got so much acidity and minerality and just this aliveness.
And I am not one of those people. I believe that you can age white wines. I mean, here in Paso Robles, a lot of our Rhone varietals, I've had 14s and 15s that are still drinking like they were released a year ago. So, there is tremendous ageability to them.
I love that.
But there are some people out there with their own biases that we have to overcome.
So, okay, I'm gonna answer the question in a freewheeling kind of way, because that's just kind of unfortunately the way I do it.
Let her rip.
So much to my chagrin, Chardonnay may end up being one of the greatest things that we can do here on this site. And I say much to my chagrin because we don't have as much Chardonnay as we have a lot of other things. But you never know what's going to happen until it happens. So Valliant is, frankly speaking, we have a couple of different things going on here. We've got our estate series, and then we've got Valliant. I make it look like a judgment. Let's call them a side by side. So there's estate. The idea behind it's estate grown, everything on the estate, and it has different layers going up. Valliant is two things. One, it's more accessibly priced, but also it represents that you have to have parameters. Creativity needs goalposts, needs parameters. So two of the ones you're going to have are Valliant and represent the two avatars of Valliant. One is the Chardonnay, which is technically a second or estate Chardonnay. So I'm very, very proud of it. It's the accessible version of our Chardonnay. And then Sirah, which is Valliant, is anything that has made in this appellation can fall under the Valliant line. So even though we don't eat Sirah, we label it Valliant. We appellate it Central Coast as the Chardonnay is appellated Central Coast, and we call it Valliant. Now, even though it's appellated Central Coast, the Chardonnay is 100% estate. That said, now to talk about how I make Chardonnay. So our Chardonnays all of our wines are built with an idea that power is easy. We're in California. Sunshine's going to give us that. Let's not chase it. What we want to find is balance, texture, minerality, and acidic precision. those are hard to find, but I cut my teeth on the great wines of Burgundy, the great wines of the Rhone Valley. I worked in that world for a long time. I love those wines. I love California as well. And I never reference California as an apology in comparison to those wines.
Yeah.
Anytime people say California wines are big and blousy, that's a winemaker's choice. That's not a fait accompli.
Right.
And so for me, I think if we've got one of California, and I believe we have one of California's greatest terroirs, one of California's greatest appellations, then I make no apologies and I take no step back from expecting our wines to present the way the wines I love from Burgundy would present. And it sounds egotistical, but it's not saying that our wines are DRC. I'm saying that our wines will be made with the same care, because I can control care, not outcome.
Right.
And I believe that care has an impact on outcome. So even though this is our second wine Chardonnay, blah, 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 we have a lot of wine that doesn't make Valliant that I sell to other people, and then they bottle for a lot more money than we bottle.
Mm-hmm.
And just out of curiosity, what is the price point on the Valliant Chardonnay versus your estate Chardonnay?
So retail, do you mind if I'll just mention tasting room retail basically?
No, that's
So
fine.
Valliant Chardonnay is $25 and the estate Chardonnay is 42. Okay. And so I do feel that it represents tremendous value. So now let me talk about how we make Chardonnay and get a little bit less philosophical. I feel like I'm going to kill you guys. This is awful. I'm
They
really
can handle
getting
it.
into
it. This is a battle-hardened group here. Yeah.
Not to make this go to your head, but I got a text from some people here who think you're fascinating.
Oh, well, next time get Randall Graham, he'll really talk your ears off.
Oh God, or Gary Pizzoni. Yeah, no.
Or Gary
right.
Pizzoni. I got a list of old guys that'll talk your ears off.
Oh yeah, Gary Conway. Jeez, yeah, we could go for hours.
Yeah, some of them. God, I love talking to those guys though. Anyway, so yes, the way we make the wines, just to get technical here for a second, our Chardonnay is it's grown raisonné is the French form, functionally organic, sustainable. I could talk about organics. I'm not going to get into it yet because this could be a 6-hour talk if we're going to do that.
Yes.
But we source from 5 different locations, all on our contiguous estate, as is being very nicely shown by Allison.
Yes, the spokes model.
Yes, the spokes model. So the yellow boxes on her little paper map there, kind of to the left side, are the blocks of Chardonnay. We farm sustainably raisonné, which is functional organic. We pick 100% by hand at night. We bring in the fruit cold. And then we basically immediately run it into presses. No enzymes, no additives of any kind, it's all indigenous yeast. So we don't add yeast. We press it, we let it go brown. So we let it basically cauterize against oxygen.
Right.
And then we flow it into a single tank where, in this case, where the wine essentially, I hate the word, but homogenizes so that each barrel starts with the same basics.
Right.
It's there for basically a day, and then we flow it into barrels, 100% French oak, 20% new barrel. Although in Valliant, none of the new barrels generally don't make an appearance, but there may be a few that I'm tasting it a little bit. And we do nothing.
Just to clarify, you pick all your Chardonnay, it goes through the exact same process.
Yes, whether it's estate, Valliant.
Because you have not determined
Terraces.
you have not determined that at the time.
That's right. That's right. And there's a reason for this, which is we have an indication of which vineyards present themselves in certain ways, but we're looking to make complete wines. And any individual vineyard is an element of a complete wine, but not generally a complete wine in its own right, the exception of our estate Chardonnay, perhaps, or Terraces Chardonnay, which comes from a single vineyard site. We are going to flow it off into barrels, and then we do nothing. We do at 17, we still did 2 strokes of batonnage, but almost none. We don't add yeast. We don't do much in the way of batonnage. In 17, we did a little bit, but we got away from that almost entirely.
For those who don't know, batonnage is the stirring of the lees. So they're letting the wine rest on its yeast cells basically, and you stir that up to add body, a little bit of flavor, more texture to it.
Right. And then we don't inoculate for malolactic fermentation, the transition from malic to lactic acid with the softening process. We don't inoculate for that. It occurs naturally.
Okay.
The result is these wines are not, and the result, we can't have any sulfur. During 7 months, this wine is governing itself barrel by barrel, and each barrel is becoming a different animal, a different entity. And all we do is watch them closely to make sure they don't go off the rails, but we do nothing to influence their development. And then at the end of the 11 months, we know all the barrels intimately, we're tasting them all the time.
Right.
We'll then say barrel A, B, and C are going to be reserve. Here's Terraces, here's Estate, here's Valliant, and then this majority of barrels we're going to sell off to other people so that they can find their own dream with those wines, however that's going to happen.
So Terraces is not specific.
So it's probably
Terraces doesn't come from a specific.
Terraces is specifically from the terrace. It is from it's from the T block, the terrace block, very small block of terrace Chardonnay, but a little bit of that may be taken off to go into reserve Chardonnay also.
Got it.
So there's still barrel selection, but the Terraces Chardonnay will only be from the Terraces. And so even though this wine is priced as like a grocery store fighter, there's nothing on a shelf at this price point that's made in this way. I don't believe.
So you have four. You make
not as far as I know.
Yeah. So we make 4 Chardonnays. Yes.
4 Chardonnays.
That's right. That's right.
Technically 5 if you consider the others that are out
You
there.
consider the other. Yeah, but
world.
and I'm speaking very, very openly, very plainly about the way this works, because every winery operates, all the great wineries of the world basically operate this way.
Right.
You can buy Harlan under other brands, you can buy Latour under other brands.
Yeah.
And you can buy Eden Rift under other brands. That is a very normal process. It's not a lack of confidence or anything like that. I'm just giving you the secret sauce.
No, it's like Kirkland vodka being Grey Goose. It's the
It's Grey
dirty
Goose.
secret that everybody knows.
Except that Grey Goose probably makes the Kirkland, whereas when you sell your fruit, you're not making the wine. You're selling, right?
No. I'm talking about making finished wine.
I was going to say at that point, it's like it's got to be 80% done, and maybe they'll add a little bit of oak or
there are people who have sold wine that didn't make it into Valliant, but they sell it for $50 a bottle. I won't tell you who it is.
So if we wanted to make
Go tell us offline.
If we want to make our own private labels, we can talk to you about buying a little of your extra juice.
When you say a little, you better be talking a lot.
Yeah, what's your minimum case output?
No. I've got some friends where I do an annual private label for their families.
Very nice.
Just because they've been friends for years and years, and some of my early supporters. So
nice. So now
actually,
this is
Maya Kamas, little known. Maya Kamas, owned by the Schatzstein family, one of my favorite wineries in California. They do 2 barrels of kosher Chardonnay because the Schatzsteins want it for high holidays.
Oh, interesting.
Just a little unknown fact.
Yes. Little whatever fun fact in Yiddish is. That's what that is.
Well, sort of kosher. I mean, if they're still making it.
No, it's kosher. They bring up a rabbi. They have it bound, like it's full on. It's a really cool.
Do they have
project.
an entirely separate winery where they make that out of, or is that just
no? But they've got separate equipment, separate barrels, and it's under rabbi control.
Huh.
There are 2 types of kosher. There's Passover kosher, and then there's koshers.
Yeah.
Is that like Republican Jesus versus Bible Jesus?
I got nothing. I got nothing for you.
No, this is, I mean, at this price point, this is an otherworldly Chardonnay, to get us back on topic.
Yes.
I personally, I get just like to sound incredibly pretentious, the faintest soupçon of the oak on this. Just a little hint of it.
That's why I think there may be a couple of new barrels that made it into the blend.
Yeah. Which is awesome, because so often at this type of a price point, it's staves and blocks and extracts and whatever it might be, and it's either Rombauer Cougar juice, or it's like all malic, like super high, burning the roof of your throat, like acid bomb kind of thing.
My goal for this is to be a village Burgundy.
Yeah. And it is, I mean, it is,
You know.
if you're striving for balance, this is remarkable. And I, as somebody who, you know, will not normally pick a Chardonnay off the list, but does appreciate Chardonnay, like this is tremendous.
And Valliant is more of your brand that we can find in commercial places.
Yeah, I mean, you'll find it in some larger retailers, but you also find it mostly in restaurants. So if you go to Mastro Steakhouse all over the country, you're going to find Valliant Chardonnay right now by the glass. And that's really what it was built. It was built to introduce people to our visit, to what we do. And, you know, on a commercial basis, I can tell you this wine, my accountants hate it, and it's a complete disaster. It's the dumbest thing we do. And it's, I think, really necessary to what we do, because wine needs to be drunk for us to be known. And we need to be known to be viable, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Well, here's how to answer that question.
It's a marketing expense,
Now-
basically. If
Yeah.
you're
Now
making
that
a little
you-
less money off.
Now that everyone here has tried his $25 Valliant Chardonnay, how many people want to try his Terraces or Reserve or one of his other Chardonnays?
See, I'm happy with the 20. I'm happy with the 25, but I'm a cheap bastard, so it works out nice.
all right, well, we're cutting you off. We're cutting you off.
That's fair. What if you don't mind me asking, what's the case production on the Valliant, and what's your overall case production? And if that's trade secret, you don't have to tell us.
That's kind of trade secret, kind of, I don't know.
Okay.
Because we're a little bit fluid about it. I made a decision today on our high-end Pinots where I moved 7 barrels from one program to another because they make more sense that way. Because you know, all these wines are alive, and all of our experience, all of our relationships to them are alive. And so the wines shift around because they tell us what they want to be. I try to let our marketing plan govern as little as possible, because marketing plans are where terrible decisions are born.
Right.
And I just, you know, I spent a long time managing them, and I find that you think you're managing a marketing plan, but really a marketing plan is managing you. And the things we love are rarely born there. The things we love are born through sort of indigenous process, if you will, especially in wine. I mean, if we're not doing something that's based in sort of love and serendipity, what the hell are we doing?
Again, and that's a beautiful bumper sticker T-shirt that needs to be made somewhere. You are meme worthy. These are meme worthy wines and a meme worthy proprietor is what we've got. Awesome. Let's before we jump away from that and jump into the Pinot Gris, let's talk a little bit about food pairings with that Chardonnay. You know, obviously, being a somm, you know, what would be some of the primary food pairings that you think would really make the Chardonnay pop, or the food this Chardonnay would make those food products pop?
Well, I think the interesting thing with this Chardonnay is that it has a lot of acid precision and minerality, which means that it's going to be very flexible, because anything that's got sort of a fattiness or richness can work very well, because it's going to slice through that and keep you hungry, you know, refresh you for your next bite. And by the same token, that minerality and acidity will also go with fresh shellfish, which are the opposite of fatty.
Right.
So I would either do this wine with sort of a, you know those like Parisian seafood towers.
The Plateau de Fruits de Mer.
Ouais, le même. So that's either that, or I would do this with, actually, it might go perfectly well with a you know, spaghetti vongole or something like that. You know, something with shellfish.
We're seeing vegan mac and 3 cheese with sage. We have some vegans on here, which is fair. I personally
I'll take that.
When I tasted this, the first thing that came to mind was sandabs, which sort of, you know, gives you the richness, the fattiness of
there you go. Yeah,
we're talking about, but also the seafood. Wiener Schnitzel would be another, just any of the, like, you know, fried chicken cutlet, like that type of thing, chicken marsala kind of.
You get your katsu sandwich, as long as you know, if you want to get truly international.
Exactly.
Fried chicken sandwich from Japan. Perfect.
There you go. Boom.
Korean
fried chicken would be fantastic, and you could get
KFC.
All you have to do is step over the fault line, and you can just get your Korean fried chicken right there.
That's right. That's right. Our neighbors to the west.
Exactly.
That's perfect. Cool. Yeah. Yes, I like that.
Those are great. No, I think those are good choices. We got a vegan one in there. Yeah, mac and cheese would be phenomenal with that because
Yeah, and I love the sage idea. I think that's a
Mhm.
great way to pull out some of that vague herbaceousness. It's another thing I believe about wines is that wines need a ribbon of green in them.
Yes.
They need
Yeah.
something herbal to keep them fresh, not like canned green bean herbal, but something leafy to keep them lifted and fresh and delicious.
Yeah.
And when we fear that vegetal character, I think we miss something.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thyme, basil, oregano,
Yeah.
just some leafy green chevril, something in there
Nice,
to
yeah.
set it off. Yeah. Beautiful. All right, let's move on. 2019 Terraces Pinot Gris. So we're moving from Burgundy to Alsace with this. I imagine because of the coolness, was this a varietal that was already being grown in the vineyards, or was this something that you brought to it because of the cool characteristic climate of the area?
I would say both.
Okay.
This is a wine that I really enjoy telling the story of. And thank you guys for letting me be so long-winded. I realized that the evening's cruising along and we're moving slowly.
It's Zoom, they're not here, they're not stuck here mandatorily, so they can always log
fair
off.
enough. So with this wine, when we came in, there was an Italian concept here where the dream had been Super Tuscans. And that's a great idea, except for two things. One, you can't ripen Cabernets and Merlot, and two, nobody wants Italian varieties grown in California. Those are just two small issues in the Super Tuscan project. One of the things that was here was about 10 acres of Pinot Gris, which they'd made into Pinot Grigio. Now, 2/3 of that planting was not sensible at all. And it's wonderful Chardonnay. It was terrible Pinot Gris. It wasn't appropriate. But what they did have was about 3 acres of terraced Pinot Gris. Now, this was ludicrous for a whole different reason, which is terraces are incredibly expensive to make and to farm. And Pinot Gris, under the label Pinot Grigio, is really not worth very much. And the only good decision to that was to pull it out and do something different. But I always think it's kind of obnoxious when I hear somebody in my trade say, we want to make America's greatest Chardonnay. We want to make America's greatest Pinot Noir. Because I always feel like it's a ridiculous thing to say, because everybody's shooting to make the best they can. And it just feels very self-important. Now, what feels less self-important is when you say, this is a variety nobody wants to grow at all. Maybe we could say we're the only people who want to take this Grand Cru seriously, right? In Alsace, Pinot Gris is one of 5 Grand Cru grapes, right? There's what? Pinot Gris, Pinot Blanc, Muscat, Riesling, and Gewürztraminer, right? Those are your 5 Grand Crus in Alsace. Well, if it could be Grand Cru in Alsace, then why not shoot for that brass ring here? And the only person going for it, we've got the only Pinot Gris in the state, and we're the only people shoot for that quality. And if it doesn't work, then we can tear it out, right? But it was less of a conceit and more of a personal challenge to say, could we make it great? And we'd use the same protocol that we use with all of our other grapes: indigenous yeast, hand harvested, organically farmed. No enzymes, no tricks, no nothing. We do it with neutral oak and just a little bit of stainless steel, and we basically make it in a Grand Cru Alsatian style, but with no residual sugar like the Clovinspool and the like. And this is what comes. And so it was on probation from the first year. So 2017 was the first one we did. This is 2019, 2 years in. I love it.
No recidivism.
That's right. No recidivism. I love it. It's become a real thing that we feel strongly about. It's something we can do that nobody else can do.
Yeah.
Other winemakers are in line to be able to get these grapes if we'll let some go. I let Ian Brand, who's a friend of mine, have some, but otherwise we just basically don't let anybody use these grapes.
We might be featuring Ian at a future.
He's a good guy.
Winery. He is. I used to sell his wines in my wine shop, and always they did very, very
Chris
well.
is just having, a hard time dealing with GSO. So he's
True.
sort of done with the
So the bottom line behind this was you wanted to make make Pinot Gris great again is basically
Yes.
what your plan was for this.
Yes, that's exactly what it was.
Got it.
We wanted to, I love the idea. Eden Rift, Hollister, Pinot Gris from Terraces, these are all unwinnable fights. And that to me is the real fun of it. I mean, if you're a hedge fund guy and you can throw $1 million at making something make sense, fine, you can force it to make sense. But
Which,
how do you
again,
take something?
The Ploussard, man. Let's jump on the Ploussard train, and you can lead it. Come on, man. We can do Ploussard. It can happen.
You know what? I almost pulled the trigger on Aglianico 2 years ago, and I almost pulled the trigger on Gruner.
If you need some good Aglianico cuttings, I have the guy here in Paso Robles who planted the first Aglianico in America.
I've got the oldest Aglianico cuttings in Campania that were going to be put in a duffel bag and brought over.
Oh wow!
The owners of Fuente de San Gregorio are old friends, and they volunteered to give us the cuttings.
Well, you could see, there you go. You could do side by side. You could do oldest in California, oldest in Campania.
Yes,
play it off.
Look, I'll take on a lot of fights. I just try to pick fights that I can possibly win.
That's the marketing and the bean counters talking.
Well,
man. Come on.
No. It's wanting to keep my chin intact.
I gotta say that this Pinot Gris,
Chuck Wepner.
You can go ahead and pat yourself on the back for this one, because first of all, I love it's got this depth of texture on the palate that is extraordinary. It's like the stone fruit minerality. It's like you've got the minerality comes from the pits of the peaches and the apricots. It's like you can taste that. Yeah. And it's just like, sorry, you're right, Jeannie. I know, I'm staying quiet on it. To me, it's been pointed out that you keep saying varietals way too many times.
Are you talking to me or him? Anyway,
I don't say varietals, do I?
What captured me with this is the bracing acidity on this, where the acidity is definitely one of the first things you notice, and the minerality ties into that, but it's not overpowering, because too often with Pinot Grigios, they tend to be real fat and round and flabby and basically like a limp kind of somewhere in between. Go ahead.
The difference between this and a Pinot Grigio is 5 tons to the acre. Yeah. Right. I mean, this is 2.5 tons versus 7.5 tons to the acre. Yeah. No, and you can only stretch a grape so far before it loses all character, all varietal character. And that's the proper use of the word. I'm just putting it out there.
No, it's true. It's the adjectival format rather than the noun format. But
so often.
No, I think even with some of the Alsatians, I find that the acidity can be very bracing, and it's the type of wine where you can maybe have a glass or two, but it can start to affect you because of that high level of acidity.
It'll take you're going to eat your tooth enamel along with your dinner.
Right, exactly, with your fondue. With your
there's such a beautiful texture, and as I said before, this depth of texture that it just, the Chardonnay is gorgeous. I really was surprised when you said let's do Chardonnay first, but I get it, and it lingers, and it's gorgeous. But there's also this slight oiliness on the finish, like that. Yeah. It's fascinating.
Yeah, there's both that textural oiliness and a phenolic bitterness that only a few white grapes have. I mean, if ever you want to, that's one of the, if you're ever blind tasting in anger with whites, phenolic bitterness is one of your primary clues, because there are only a few grapes that'll present it.
Yeah. My story this week is about Nacheta, which is the indigenous white grape of Barolo, and I always have my mom look at my articles before I submit them, and everyone, she's like, it doesn't sound appealing that every wine is bitter, has a bitter finish. And I was like, oh no, but that's what's special about the grape. She goes, I don't think I'd want to drink bitter. And I'm like, no, it's a good thing. It's a very good thing.
Yeah, no, it is beautifully balanced wine. Have you found that, do you think that the terracing where these vines are located comes into play in that? Did it, open up a little bit more of the earthiness and the minerality to it?
I get two primary outcomes from terraces, qualitative outcomes. One is the yields are low, because there's no organic material. I mean, there's 2% organic material in the terraces. There's too little dirt for weeds to grow. Like, it is tough. When you're down in the, if vine growth from the 90s like this,
right,
or more, right? And then if you look at these vines, they're like this. They just don't have that much material to work with. So the yields end up super low. But then also because you have only the stone, limestone and granite, just rock, these the root systems are incredibly deep, 30-foot taproot systems, right? And all they can pull out is mineral.
Yeah.
And so that's what terraces give us. And that's why I didn't keep the stuff that's beautiful on the flats, where Chardonnay really shines, because Chardonnay, what I was trying to do there was different than Pinot Gris. With Pinot Gris, I wanted to give everything we could to this Pinot Gris, regardless of what its market position was, regardless of what people think is a good idea, regardless of what Pinot Gris theoretically deserves in the United States. I wanted to give it everything. And so we gave it one of the most privileged vineyard sites. So Pinot Gris and our Terraces Chardonnay are planted next to each other. And I think those are our two, everybody's gonna hate me for saying this within the company, but those are probably my two finest whites. And it's site specific, right? I mean, Eden Rift is a terroir driven estate. With our Chardonnays, you've got a map, Allison. If you look at O block and T block, they are 200 feet separated, and you can absolutely tell them the difference in barrel. You can basically, if you look at this map, wherever you are in this vineyard within 500 feet, you can cite yourself with barrel tasting, which I don't think there are a lot of estates that can claim. And that's because we're so terroir led.
Is that just because of the different styles of rock? I mean, it's heavier limestone here, more granite there, and then maybe on the other side of the rift, you've got more of the sandstone for things like that.
There is that. We also have a lot of different clonal diversity, because, and with our next wine, actually, this is the perfect segue. We're going to go to Pinot.
Okay. I'm no longer in control of my virtual tasting. It's very sad.
Honestly, no, you're not. So
varietal.
Well, as long as you're using that to refer to character and not variety, I don't mind.
This is a long-standing battle that I have, that he does not.
I think in the new wine world, we've reached a point where varietal has become synonymous with variety. We just have to accept that.
I won't.
That's fair.
This is why I like you, Christian.
You folks,
why I like you.
You folks with your Palm Pilots and your Blackberries can hold on to those antiquated notions. We iPhone folks will move on in the future.
Are you basically saying that we should just forego proper grammar? We're done with it?
I was going to say.
I'm saying eventually your technology will become outdated and obsolete.
I think we're being generally condemned for literacy. I'm not sure where the point to that is, but
if you were speaking in Old English, you would still be technically correct, but nobody would be able to understand what you're talking about. So 23 skidoo. Anyway, let's talk Pinot.
All right, man. Okay. So earliest English form of the word grape is winberries, wineberries, 13th century. There you go. So this is our estate, 2017 estate Pinot Noir. So this is a little older than what's generally in market. I wanted to do this because I wanted us to really take a look at something that's got some savoriness and the early stages of development. Now, Allison touched on the fact that our Chardonnay holds over time. That's because we produce our wine with the anticipation of holding it in our own warehouse for a year before we consider releasing it. It's not sensible, but it means we can make our wine in a totally different way. Which is we can make wines that are made for midterm, not short term. If I'm not worried about, basically pumping off the line into a bottle and onto a Safeway shelf within a 72-hour window, I don't have to worry about having tannin or acid balance or these kind of things, right? Balance is found over time with wine. There's my small soapbox. Now I'm off of it. We're talking about clonal variety. So Pinot Noir is and is not a blended wine. So it is not a blended wine, as in anytime you try to blend Pinot Noir with anything else, it's terrible. So Pinot Noir and Cabernet blend together, awful. Merlot, awful. With Nebbiolo, really, really heinous. So we don't really try to blend Pinot Noir with anything else.
I did have a good Pinot and Marshall Foch blend one time in Southern Oregon, but that's neither here nor there.
I'll go with the second.
And if you go to Valle de Guadalupe, they like to blend Pinot, Nebbiolo, and Zinfandel with Merlot.
That's because they lack space. So
that was called whatever was left over. We're doing a red blend.
Yeah, that's we've got a 10,000 gallon tank and a bunch of 2,000 gallon ferments. Now let's make a blend.
And we can sell it to dumb gringos for $35 a bottle.
I didn't go there. I didn't say that.
I did.
That sounds like a practical blend, not a vision blend. But the thing is, when you look at Pinot Noir, we think about a single grape. It is a single variety, but it is not consistent. It is so it is a clonal grape where it is incredibly genetically unstable and it diversifies into clones all the time. So I've got the Dijon clones, 828, 115, 777, 667 at Pommard. I've got the California clones, some of them, the heritage clones, Calera clone on our terraces. Let's see, Martinelli, that's a Zinfandel. Martini clone, Swan clone, they're wonderful things. But each one of these clones expresses itself so differently. And so, when we buy Burgundy is a clonal blend. Les Amoureux is different from Clos Vougeot because not only are they different narrow appellations, but because the way these vineyards are propagated is not that they go, oh no, a vine died. Let's call the nursery and get some random Pinot and bring it over and plant it. Say, let's take another vine that's healthy, graft it, or let's just plant it straight. And so what we're going to end up with is as the genetic instability expresses itself in this one block, it's going to start to look less and less like the blocks next door. And so Les Amoureux, Clos Vougeot, Latache, they're going to have their own genetic cohort, right? And they're going to start to taste and smell and express differently than the other vineyards in Burgundy. So even though it's all Pinot Noir, it's all different Pinot Noir. We do this in America, not because we've had time to, although the fact that I call them Mount Eden, Calera, Martini, and the like, that's where I was going. Anyway, the fact that I can refer to these means that in just the 30 years that it was on that site, or 40 years that it was at Calera, genetically morphed from what arrived to what exists now. And I can create wines using these, not just places in our vineyard, but also genetic maps, genetic footprints of the different grapes. Sorry, I'm now starting to sound like Randall Graham. I apologize. So at the end of the day, each one of our Pinots, so let me make it more practical. Dijon Clone 828 has beautiful aromatics and length. Mid palate really suffers. 777 has terrible aromatics, an amazing texture, and a great attack. When I put those two together, they start to look like a whole wine. Independently, they look incomplete. Mm-hmm. And so most of our wines, like this one, is 115, 777, 828, and Pommard. And with this mechanism, with this methodology, we're able to create a whole wine that is Eden Rift. I don't believe it's a violation of terroir. I believe it gets closer to a perfect expression of our vineyard because each one of these grapes represents a voice and together they make a harmony. That's how I think about it.
So let me ask
Okay,
you.
that was super a lot.
It was, but let me ask you. So as opposed to the Chardonnay, are you separating out these clones into separate barrels and then blending together? Or are you doing, so you're not doing
exactly
like
the
you do
same
with
way as a
where
Chardonnay.
oh, you are
By the
putting
time-
everything together in a single tank and then,
No, sorry.
okay.
We are going to do individual picks over the course of weeks. And then we're going to put those in because you ferment the Pinot before you go to barrel, right? Instead of Chardonnay, which you're fermenting in the barrel. So I'm going to put I basically do 2.5 and 5 ton open top ferments, or even 1 ton. We have some small ones. And I'm going to ferment individually. And I might do an experiment. I will do a normal fermentation. I might do whole cluster, or I might do extended maceration. And so by the end of it, with all the different clones, all the different vineyards, and all the different fermentation methodologies, I might have 100 different blending elements that are available to me by the end of the year. And so it is an amazing process where Eden Rift exists in this array of barrels, and then it's our opportunity to go and uncover it and to help Eden Rift start to come together in its various bottlings.
I have a question about the clones. It's not, I know it's a blend, that makes sense, but it's not as intentional in terms of percentages, right? I mean, you're not thinking, oh, I want to have, because you're not picking them as here's the clone 667 is here in this. I mean, it's all about an integrate, because I always find it clones are such an interesting subject. I think it's an important thing for the winemakers and for you living on the territory, on the territory itself. But I always laugh at when I've been to wineries with consumers and, the owner or the winemaker's like, this is a blend of 667 and 777. And you're like, it doesn't mean anything to a consumer, because to me, how those clones express themselves in your terroir versus how they express themselves in Edna Valley or in Sonoma,
Santa Lucia, yeah,
or Santa Lucia or anywhere else, Santa Rita Hills are going to be different expressions. It's not like it always tastes the same. So if I like this clone, I'm going to love it everywhere I go.
Look, a great winemaker, a friend of mine who's much more successful than I, and much better known than I am, said to me, Christian, why are you busting your head on this thing? Just plant 828 and call it a day. That's the Central Coast magic bullet. It's easy. And he's right. I mean, that's easy. And it's not, and it's commercially practical. And it's not where we find the voice of what we're trying to do. We don't have a recipe. As we get better and better at what we do, as we have more vintages under our belt, we understand there are trends, but we also understand that different vintage characteristics will affect different varieties expressions differently. And so it'll change the way we think about what we're doing. And when I look at the terraces or the single vineyard terrace wines, those are easy. They're all 100% Calera clone. But then when I look at Reserve, oddly enough, Reserve never has Calera in it because it doesn't play nicely with some of the Dijon clones. And then, so I'm looking at all these different moving pieces and creating, I've got 7 different Pinot Noir bottlings. All of them have very specific identities, and all of which are truly representative of Eden Rift, but all of those are also expressions of clonal selection. It's very complex, and I apologize for that.
No need to apologize. I mean, this is the beauty of winemaking, is every winemaker, every proprietor can get as complex or as simplistic as they want. And that's the beauty. There are so many variants and variations and, little changes that one can make to make.
I'm going to go back to marketing department notes and get sensible here.
There you go. No, it's funny. My girlfriend has a half brother who he lived for many, many years in the Willamette Valley and was always out wine tasting and worked in the wine industry there, and could legitimately, while tasting, pick out certain clonal aspects based on the tasting, because he had tasted so many, he had heard so much about 776 versus 777 versus Pomard versus,
Spiel and whatever else. Yeah.
Yeah.
In the Willamette Valley, though.
Right, exactly. I mean, I suspect if you took him to Santa Lucia, he would mention something and it would be the completely wrong clone.
But I would also say that terroir overrides clone.
That's what I was going to ask you that, like, which is more important?
Yeah,
the
terroir is more important than clone. Clone is fine tuned, right? Terroir is the size of your pants, and the clone is the color you choose. And so for some random reason, I chose to explain it that way. But no, but it's true, right? For me, our Pinot Noir always has, across all of the Pinots that we make, there is a black tea, bergamot, which is citrus, dried rose petal characters. That is the terroir expression that I experience vintage after vintage in Eden Rift, across all of our Pinots. And even in the juice, I get those things before ferment. I don't find those in Sonoma, and I don't find them in Napa, and I don't find them in Central Coast anywhere else. That's who we are. And it expresses across all of our clones. The clones just help us interpret that in a different way, right? And when I talk about different voices in a chorus, that's what I think about clones being. They're singing the same piece of music and they're in the same church, but they express it differently.
Yeah. So what is differentiating the estate from, you mentioned 7 different Pinot bottlings, What differentiates the one that we have from some of the others that you have there?
I would say this is our most important presentation. This is the one that's the total voice of the estate, right? So it's 4 clones. It is Dijon clones. It's sort of, this is like the sort of sensual, velvety approach to Pinot Noir that I feel Pinot Noir has at its soul. Beyond this, we of course have the Valliant Pinot. We've got a reserve Pinot, which is the more opulent barrels. And so it comes in above this estate Pinot, but in a similar style with similar clones. It's kind of like estate Pinot turned up to 11. But then we also have single clone or single sites like Terraces, Lansdale, which is a specific terrace, Pontag, which is a single clone, which are higher level, but they're not necessarily better. They're more esoteric, and they're beautiful because like the Lansdale will age like nothing else will for us. It's 100% a whole cluster. It's probably the highest quality expression of Pinot Noir we've ever made, but I just can't make very much of it.
Right.
And so that's just what it's going to be, and it will live in that little role.
Well, there's your
and we do a
$150 bottle.
One day maybe. It ain't that now. And then we do some carbonic Pinot because I really enjoy Beaujolais, right?
Nice.
And so we have a Beaujolais style one that we call Eden Avant, with a play on Moulin Avant, that we do 828, which is the most Beaujolais style or Gamay style of our Pinots, and we do it in a carbonic manner, redolent of Beaujolais. So there are a lot of different ways to skin this cat.
Yeah,
if I can use that reference.
Absolutely. We'll make sure our vegans here on the call are not offended by that. And if you are, I apologize.
We're not going to eat the cat. We're not going to eat
skin that bell pepper is what he meant. Yes. Let's talk a little bit about food pairings with this one. The classic you always hear is duck in Pinot Noir, which obviously I could see, a duck breast on this. But to me, this is a Pinot with a little more heft, a little more muscle to it. It's not as elegant. There is elegance to it, but at the same time, to me, it's a little more forward. I won't say in your face because I think you might get upset and turn that around on me, but it's definitely a bolder style Pinot Noir. Yeah.
It's a Pinot Noir that is a child of the California sunshine, that's for sure. But I'm not apologetic at all about its structure, its acidity, which I think is the big thing. Pinot Noir and Chardonnay are wonderful for being basically the most applicable wines that you can have in food and wine pairing, right?
Right.
Literally anything can be made to go with these wines. So, for this wine, I'm going everywhere from poached salmon to barbecued chicken, or if you want to, and I apologize to Scott for talking about proteins. This
Oh,
actually,
Scott's not our vegan. Don't worry about that.
oh,
No,
I
no,
thought
Scott's
Scott was
not
a
a
vegan. Okay, because I was, because actually what I'm going to have this bottle. This is my bottle that I'll have with dinner tonight, and I'm going to have it with French lentils. Because I think you're looking anything that expresses an earthy flavor, and that is not too, just heavy and powerful, is going to be perfect. So, I'm doing French lentils in a salad, and I'm going to have this Pinot Noir. It's going to be a perfect match.
Beautiful.
You have some fans in here. I mean, Matt really likes it. Stacy really likes it. I'm getting private texts.
You guys are great.
Rigo loves it. And what he said is that Pinot is not Matt. Is this correct, Rigo? Pinot is not Matt's favorite grape variety, yet he absolutely loves this wine.
Yeah.
No, it's got great taste.
It's a beautiful Pinot Noir. I mean, it really is. And you're absolutely right. Like the acidity on it is kind of the draw. There is a leanness to it that just really bounces, but then it has this muscularity to it in terms of the flavor and the fruit that comes forward. It's not that sort of drier, earthier style that you might find from the Santa Rita Hills or even parts of the Willamette.
Or even some, we've got bottlings that are like that. And it's not the intention of this wine.
Yeah.
This wine, I want it to be just a tiny bit on the sort of sensual and available side. I don't know what word you'd use for that, Allison. There's got to be a word.
No, but
it's
I think
Simone Biles. It's muscular but lithe.
But there's something not, like Pinot Noir in general can be a very complex wine. It can be very interesting with layers, and you get some that are bigger and some that are earthier and some that are more, about the berries and stuff like that. And what I like about this is it's one of those Pinot Noirs that you can just enjoy. It has bits of those elements. It's got some muscle. It's got some, kind of sexiness to it. It's got the fruit. It's got the earth, but nothing is pushing you one way or another. It's just saying, hey, enjoy me.
Yeah.
But I can
that's what I want for it.
The things.
Yeah. But that's what I want for it. Right. I want it to be I want it to be accessible, but also you stop to notice it as you're enjoying it.
I think that's an apt description for your Pinot, is that it's I guess it's like your Tesla, where you can be dazzled by the technology that's happening, but the more you drive it, you're just like, I am one with the road, and I am just in a car, and I am continuing to move forward, type of thing.
I was going to say it's like your spouse. It's somebody hopefully that excites you all the time, but is very livable.
Yes.
So, all right.
So when Allison was talking about layers and
the couples all just kind of laugh.
It's true. Everybody laughed. The reason why the divorce rate is 50% in this country. No, I'm kidding. All right. Last but certainly not least, and I do have. I know this is not my place, but I do have one bone to pick with you, which is that even though you clearly put the word Valliant on the label of the Petit Sirah, the fact that you used nearly the same colorscape and mountain layout for these two, I got super confused and nearly opened two bottles of the Petit Sirah tonight instead of a Pinot in that.
I find that usually people open two bottles of Petit Sirah if they open one.
Even though one says Valliant and one says nothing on it.
So
that's a different Pinot Noir than the one that we have, because the Pinot we have does not have yellow and green in it.
It still says nothing on it. Okay. It's an empty sky.
As the winemaker, can I speak?
Please.
Okay, good. Just checking. So I would say that's a very fair thing to notice. It's something we talk about a lot here. It comes to two things. One, I'm not embarrassed about the wine. I don't need it to be visually that distinct from the quote unquote main brand. Mm-hmm. And also, I don't make a lot of this. Like, I make 250 cases. The chance of you finding this in the wild is really low.
Got it.
So I think you've got a Cadillac problem, but I appreciate that it is a problem.
Hey, I just having them there was just something that I pointed out, and
totally
I'm not telling you how to do. I'm not telling you how to do your business. You can send me the letter that says, thank you for bringing this to our attention. We appreciate your patronage. And, here's a coupon, that type of thing. But
yeah, I'm not going to send you a coupon, but I appreciate your
that's fair.
So
I don't deserve a coupon.
So
it's perfectly fair.
here's my question for you.
Yes.
Petit Sirah, the big unctuous,
the ketchup of the wine world. Let's call it what it is. It's what they blend in with Syrah and Cab when they need to add color and flavor and boldness and whatnot.
I thought that was Mega Purple.
Well, this was Mega Purple before
like
Mega
that.
Purple became Mega Purple. Yes, exactly.
So this is more of a cool climate Petit Sirah.
This is grown near us. It's not grown by us, but it's from an unnamed vineyard a couple of miles from us. And, it's unnamed for a number of reasons, none of which I can go into, except to say that there's a reason for it. And so I am very delighted to be able to get just a little bit of these grapes. And so the idea behind Valliant is to embrace the history of the place we find ourselves. And Petit Sirah plays a great role, along with Alicante Bouschet, Zinfandel, Petit Sirah, and the like. They're foundational grapes for California's wine industry, and especially the Central Coast. It's a wine that, when really a wine's best role was to be heavy, alcoholic, and easy to make, Petit Sirah fit the bill. Right. This is a frontier man's wine. At least that was its reputation. But I also believe that these wines can be delicate and beautiful if you ask that of them. And so we do. Petit Sirah is in France known as Gris. It's a southern French grape, which is basically illegal to grow in its original home, but it found a home in California. And so we now consider Petit Sirah and Zinfandel to be the two sort of quote unquote indigenous or home grapes of California. Neither are originally from here, they're both European, of course, but they've found a home here that they've never found anywhere else. They've never been welcome anywhere else. And so we don't call it Gris, we call it Petit Sirah. And it's called Petit Sirah not because it's small on flavor, but because the berry is very small and the high skin to juice ratio lends a lot of color. We don't make a lot of this. I only have enough grapes to make 250, 300 cases a year. And in the first vintage, the 2018, all of it was exported before we bottled it was all claimed by export markets before we bottled a single bottle. So it never even got released in the United States, which is the weirdest thing.
Do you mind if I ask where you're exporting this to?
Yeah, it went to China, Japan, and the UK.
That's interesting, because those are not necessarily places I think of that like the big, again, compared to your other wines, this is a bigger, bolder style wine in that sense.
Well, it was important to me not to lose the next vintage. And so this one, we cut that off and we kept it home. I love these wines. Petit Sirah is big in color and it's flamboyant and it's exciting and it's not gentle and it's not subtle and it's not elegant. But what happens if we make it like Pinot Noir? Could we find just like a whiff of elegance? Could we find a touch of delicacy? Could we find just a little bit of fineness in the burlap of the wine world?
So is this
sorry about the burlap reference? If you know your fabrics,
is this 667 Petit Sirah or no? I'm kidding,
dude. This is old. This is 50-year-old garbage Petit Sirah that I just love.
Yeah, I think what's amazing about this is last year I tasted through like 19 Petit Sirahs. Like I had been asked if I wanted to try some Petit Sirah, and I thought, hey, I'm in lockdown. Petit Sirah's not really my grape. Sure, I'll take a couple of them and try it. Little did I know.
I don't have to smile at anybody. My teeth can be purple.
Right,
exactly.
And what I thought was going to be like sending me 3 or 4, I got 19 Petit Sirahs. And I tasted through them, and it made me rethink it. They had nice acidity, and they weren't as overly unctuous, although they were big. And what I'm really enjoying about this that I have not had in other Petit Sirahs is when I put my nose in, I get the big fruit, not over the top, but I get that kind of boysenberry, blueberry aroma that is typical. But the acidity on the palate and the density is, it's medium plus. I mean, we're not talking about it being big.
Well,
It's not that Tootsie Roll.
It's
like,
cool climate.
chocolate
This is
bomb.
not from Clarksburg. This is not from Napa. This is cool climate. It doesn't have the degrees of sugar. It has a longer growing season, and we're making it like a Pinot Noir, open top fermenter. Largely destemmed. This is not built for scale. It's built for speed. It's but it's not from a hot place. We don't get that sort of impenetrable blackness that Pinot Noir or Petit Sirah oftentimes exhibits. And it's not that I don't like those wines. I love those wines. They're an American classic, right? They're critical to our story. But that's not something I can do here, and it's not something we need to do here. Yeah. This is a different. This
is also much more drinkable, food friendly than maybe one with Petit Sirah has the ability
on a cost benefit basis. In college, I drank a lot of Petit Sirah.
Sure, I mean, we all went through our Bogle Petit Sirah phase, thinking like, oh, this is a quality big red wine, and
it's $25 and it's 17% alcohol.
Exactly. But what's interesting is I think you can draw direct parallels to this with your Pinot Gris, which is that this is clearly a 50-year-old vine, very thinly farmed Petit Sirah, which provides more of that elegance, that lightness to it, versus the Pinot Grigios, as you were talking about, it's 7.5 tons, the Bogle style, which is, picked at 28, 30 bricks, like taken down as low as they can ferment it, getting it to 15, 16, 17% alcohol, and creating that, fruit bomb style that I think
monster color.
Right, exactly. Yeah. That I think a lot of people
and oftentimes color is what people want with Petit Sirah. So you also have people using a lot of enzymes. You have people using a lot of adjustments to get color to this level. And a lot of Petit Sirah shows up in Pinot Noir to give it the color people want when they want it to look like Cabernet but taste like Pinot.
Right.
Petit Sirah, a lot of the Petit Sirah in the state actually goes to providing Cabernet color that people want. Merlot, Pinot Noir.
Right?
That's why I call it. That's why I call it the ketchup of wine, because it's that beautiful. You cover up the flavor of everything with a single note.
Never has a drop of Petit Sirah made it into our Pinot. I just want to be clear here.
Question is, how old are the Pinot Gris vines?
The Pinot Gris vines were planted in 1996.
96. Okay.
All right. I'm reading Jean's
yes.
note here.
While you're doing that,
wow, you did the research.
Yes. Well, she's a journalist, so it's not. But Patty and Morgan wanted to know about the Petit Sirah. They think the wine will age well. Will you suggest how many years that the Petit Sirah could age?
The marketer in me wants to say 20 years, no problem. That's not fair, because Petit Sirah, the point is exuberance, right? So I don't think you get to a place with Petit Sirah over time that's better than over the next 3 or 4 years. And you could hold it if you wanted to, and it'd be very nice. But I think the joy in Petit Sirah is its youth and its exuberance. I think that I would hold the Petit Sirah no longer than I would hold our Pinot, which would be about 7 years, if that's a fair answer. It'll go the distance. It'll go as long as you want it to.
Yeah. I
feel like that's not the point.
No, I think that's interesting. And by the way, if you're reading Jeannie's piece, Jeannie writes for Inland Empire magazine. So she ties a lot of things into the Riverside, San Bernardino area, which is what she's done with that. Talked about.
And spending a lot of time learning about Temecula recently. Fantastic stuff going on right now.
It's an interesting place. Allison was just down there a couple of months ago.
For my first time ever.
Yes.
Excellent.
And I had to write a story called Rethinking Temecula because I had a very snooty attitude about it until I went and was really impressed with the people and what they're doing.
How was the sidecar?
The sidecar tour.
Sure, I'm going to change my.
Sorry, what was that?
How was the sidecar tour?
I ended up, they were short a sidecar. I ended up on the motorcycle. Oh, no. I was behind the Dofo brother on the motorcycle, you know, the racers. And I had to hold on tight. It was fun.
Suffice to say, she's now in love. So.
No, his sister's like, put on my jacket and my helmet and my gloves. It was really cold. And I'm like, I'm not going to fit in that stuff. And I was like snugged into this. And I'm holding on to him. And at one point he dips down and I just knew, well, I better follow him. And then he starts speeding down the roads. Apparently people like to do this with me, right, Christian? I was in Christian's car.
Yes.
The virtual tasting that I missed, like I was on for a little while and then lost you guys because I was in the middle of nowhere with no Wi-Fi, was when I was in the Cienega Valley. And Christian had taken me from the event we were at to the restaurant so I could set up to see you guys, and took me down the country road, hit the gas on his car. And I was like, holy crap. Like, I don't know why people think that Speed and I are like.
We all know you're an adrenaline junkie, Allison.
I
Come
know.
on.
I do believe we hit 100 miles an hour trying to get you there on time.
Yes. Yes.
So,
and then the Wi-Fi bugged out on me.
so I'm the world's worst salesman on meetings, on chats like this, because I really don't like to do it. But there was a question that came in about our wine club. If anybody's interested, it's on the website, which is edenrift.com, or you can send me an email. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
You beat Chris to the punchline because he would have asked you this anyway.
I got a couple of DMs about it, and so
that's how I always finish. And I will, throw out at the end before we finish if people want to come and visit you and do a tasting, how we do that. But before that, let's again talk about food pairings with this wine. To me, this is crying out for like braised meats, pot roast. I want, just like red wine, onions, potatoes, celery, like fall apart, long braised slow meats.
Or I love brisket. That's such a good idea. Yeah. I don't hate the idea of like a mustard ribs, mustard glazed, slow cooked ribs kind of thing with this. I don't hate that.
Yeah.
It's not your sand dabs are kind of out of contention.
No. Yeah, and probably your creamier cheeses like your brie or camembert.
No sushi?
This might be a little overwhelming, but
I was actually in Napa years ago and I went to what is it? Nobu? No, or Mori. No, Nobu, right? What's the right? Yeah. And I'm sitting at the bar and I'm just having a few pieces of sushi. I wasn't overly impressed with their wine list. I thought it could have been better for the type of food, but a couple sits down next to me, orders sushi, and proceeds to order a bottle of Petit Sirah. And it was everything I could do not to say something. I did have to say something on Facebook because I couldn't, you can drink
I can only think of two pieces of sushi that would go well with a Petit Sirah, and one is like just a super fatty toro, and then the other one would be the unagi, the freshwater eel with the eel sauce. Like I could see the eel sauce with the.
But the thing is,
Petit Sirah,
this is going to pull so much of that fishy flavor out that I think that unagi and unago, so freshwater and sea eel,
right,
anago, are going to be they're heavy flavors, just like mackerel is, but fish oils are going to just be violent with this wine.
Well, except
I worry about that a little bit now. That
the saltiness, I think, is the kicker, because I think
I worry about the fish oils. The saltiness, I agree with you. So that brings me to so there's this place. This is going to sound like the bougiest thing I've said all night. I've said some bougie stuff. But there's this one restaurant in Hong Kong. It's one of my favorite restaurants in the world. That is a little 8-seat 8-seat omakase. They do one seating a night. As you can imagine, it costs a fortune, but they've got this one dish. And then whenever we're in Hong Kong, I go, and they do uni, which is sea urchin,
Yep.
and seaweed, and they stack them, stack,
Oh,
and then they age it
oh, interesting.
for like, I think 10 days in chill. And so the uni stops acting like sea urchin and starts to become more like the seaweed. And it is almost cold fermented together. And it loses any sort of fishiness and just becomes pure, hard, deep umami. And that is probably the only thing I can think about that would go with this.
Christian, you're the type of person I want to go out to eat with.
That was the bougiest thing I've said on one of these calls ever.
Allison is in love and is going to send you a Valentine note shortly after.
Just want to go out and eat and drink with you. That's all.
To be honest, I agree with Patty and Morgan, and I think that not regular Count Chocula, but dark Count Chocula would go fantastic with this.
Strong, very strong. Yeah, I mean, honestly, Petit Sirah, especially a wine like this, it's still got high acidity. Acidity is what makes a wine functional. I think that it will be basically broadly applicable from chicken on up in your proteins. And then it gets a little bit more challenging with vegetables, but if you did roasted beets, or if you had things along that category, the, sort of roasted root vegetables, things with maybe a little bit of char, I think you'd be all good.
Yeah, I could see this with like a charred leeks, or like even like really heavy shard, like a really bitter green, I think would be an interesting pairing with this. Jeannie and Charlie suggested a hearty minestrone soup with smoked mozzarella, which would be very interesting in there.
Smoke will pull out. This is wonderful.
Yeah.
Element. It is barrel aged, so it's going to emphasize that character in the wine. But I think that's a wonderful idea.
Yeah, I think circling back to your brisket idea, a nice, Texas style smoked brisket would be phenomenal with this, especially if you did more of a less tomato, less ketchup, but more like molasses based.
Molasses and mustard are going to be your friends.
Exactly. No, this is lovely. Mustard is my friend. Molasses, not so much. We're kind of frenemies. Molasses, but that's exactly. No, this has been fun, and this has been eye-opening. Christian, as we're kind of wrapping up here, what are some of the takeaways that you want people to go away with when it comes to the Cienega Valley and what you guys are doing there? Because it is part of the Central Coast, as you said. It's closer to the ocean than Paso Robles, than pretty much anywhere other than the Santa Rita Hills, in terms of the entire Central Coast. But what do you want folks to kind of take away from this virtual tasting?
Two things. So one is that a site is everything, and it transcends marketing. So that's the first thing. And so Cienega Valley has never changed. We are a band of limestone that is the home of Pinot Noir in America, right? And it's where it is. And the world moved, but we didn't. And that would be a thing that I would take away. And I'd expand on that by, I'm not so big on selling Eden Rift. I think that I'm here because I belong here, but I have a deeper love of American wine. And so I would make I would make a case for American wine beyond a case for Eden Rift. So one is, what was great is still great. It just became less well marketed for a long time. And I would tell you I would touch on how I think about buying wines. The second bougiest thing I'm going to say tonight. When I buy wines at auction, I don't think about what's popular now. I think about what was great then. And I've been in the wine business long enough to watch trends come and go. But once it goes in the bottle, an old wine is still a great wine, even if it's no longer a popular wine. And so if you know your own taste, and if you know who you are, then you can navigate yourself to the great things by looking back into what has been. And that sounds a little absurd, but like, I buy great old estates that are long since shuttered from the 90s for a song because people forgot about them, but the wines didn't change. And I think it's the same thing with estates, right? You look to things that were once great because the material is still there. It's just the market moved. There's my stories.
Hold on. Would you mind repeating that? I'm going to put Jim Croce's Time in a Bottle on in the background.
I'll take it. I'll take it. No, honestly, look,
this is why you, me, and Matthew Rorick.
I don't know.
This is why you, me, and Matt Rorick need to start the Ploussard, convention across.
Yeah,
the United
man,
States.
I love Ploussard. I don't have no history with Ploussard here, which means it doesn't belong. But I get what you're doing, and I like it. You do
Exactly.
it.
You're picking up what I'm putting down. We're here. I get it. Exactly.
No, but and maybe I sound maudlin. Maybe it sounds not fun. Maybe it sounds impractical, and maybe it sounds canned. But it's true.
No, I understand. Although I will.
The history of these places, I believe in it more.
He's slowing down. Is it just me, or is he?
No, I'm here. It's just
no, he's
okay,
back.
good. All right,
back.
this is back. Good.
Sorry.
Another one of those damn earthquakes.
Yeah.
No, what's interesting is, so you had talked about how there's this issue, and it's something I've been talking about for the last 5 years, is that at least here in Paso Robles, we're going through this period where the folks who came in the 80s and the early 90s, who were in their 40s or 50s, and it was kind of a second career or retirement career, are now hitting their 70s and 80s, and their kids aren't wanting to take over. So we're seeing a lot of interesting vineyards and wineries.
Give them Christian's number.
Up for sale. We're gonna have Valliant Paso Robles. If you need a general manager, I might be available.
I think Eden Rift is only one story that works in this way, right? Yeah. There are so many extraordinary places in California that deserve rediscovery and deserve all the investment and love necessary to put them back where they belong. Nobody's recording this, right? I am absolutely
no, not at all.
I am so tired of being sold chalk as cheese, being sold bullshit as authenticity. And this is my answer to that problem. Like, I hate being sold garbage. Yeah. And it happens every day. And I can't stand it. And that's where I am. No.
Here's the other side to that coin, which is something I've noticed is happening here in Paso, is that if you had gone back in the last 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years and picked out what you thought the worst wineries in Paso are, like the ones that are truly making undrinkable plonk, those wineries are starting to fade out and are being taken over by a new breed that is either transforming their vineyards or, kind of destroying one brand, but creating a new brand. And we're now in a period, at least here in Paso, where I feel like there are fewer, the bottom 20% has shrunk dramatically, if you will. And there's a lot less garbage wine out there, which to me is a very promising fact.
That's because the big guys, the big companies are doing it all for us.
No, not necessarily. That and the beauty is while the small guys are shrinking, at least here in Paso, we have a very robust garagiste movement of a lot of young up and coming winemakers who are starting with 200 cases, 400 cases, 1,000 cases, whatever it might be, and are kind of building their name and their brand in that way. So it's an interesting trend that I've noticed.
It's going to be a hard road, and I weep for them. And I wish them every good success and every good break. It's a hard path because
it's a hard path, but it depends on what their definition of success is. Because if their goal is to do 1,000 cases to make enough money to exist and be able to do another 1,000 cases next year and really build brand loyalty, then they're going to be fine because they're going to be able to do that year in and year out.
Right. But these kids are, and I work with a lot of people. Like there's some new projects coming from California where I donate the grapes to their project because I want to see their vision off the ground. Right. And I know how hard it is. And I know that the deck is stacked against them. because I'm getting on a diatribe here, but every time that a young guy or young woman who has a vision comes up with a new idea, a new way to approach it, a new way to think about something, there are development teams who work for Constellation and Gallo and everybody else who go, hey, that brand with 300 cases did something really cool and really love it. Why don't we take some undifferentiated garbage that we have 30,000 cases of we don't know what to do with? We'll put on a really cool label and we're going to pump it out and drown them out. And the wine business is unhealthy because we are contending with, I would say, malign forces, right? You've got very, very large companies that really they'll look to Eden Rift and say, oh, limestone authenticity, blah, blah, blah. What are their key points? Well, we're just going to go after that. We'll design a label that looks exactly like theirs and we'll just, drown it out.
This is nothing new.
That'll be the path.
The beer industry has always done that too.
I was going to say, the sofa industry, the mattress industry, like pick your industry, and unfortunately, this
so I mean, I give grapes to young people who are trying to get into this because like they need all the support they can get. I'll give them all the time and all the resources I can because I still believe that that's what we need to keep this thing viable, right? The wine industry is built on beauty, not on economics. Nobody comes to this because they need wine. They come to this because they love wine.
Right.
And that's a big difference.
Right.
So, I'm in service to the people who are here for love.
What a quote to end with.
and I am reserving 2 tons of Pulsar right now. So please pencil that in.
Good. I'm in.
Yeah. Awesome.
Right.
So yes, you talked again about your wine club, which is available at edenrift.com. If you're interested in buying additional bottles of anything you tried, we already had one of our club members who opened the bottle the day after she got it, liked it so much she bought a case, or is buying a case. I'm working with Veronica on that. So if you want to do that, again, you can go to edenrift.com or contact me. I'll be happy to put it in touch and process your order. If folks want to come up and visit, if they happen to be in Salinas or Monterey or Hollister or wherever it might be, Piscinas, how can they come and visit, do a tasting, meet you in person?
Well, you'd have to say Allison and Chris, because otherwise,
just Allison. I know you and I aren't. We're not on great terms. I understand.
Well, no, it's like I don't know what's going on. No, so if ever you're in our part of the state, right? So south of Silicon Valley, east of Monterey, we'd love to host you. Come through. We are open Thursdays through Sundays, but for friends who are traveling, we can always find concessions. I'd love to have you. And if you, it's a story that's long. It's a story that'll be long to tell. And if you guys want to come spend time and taste across the whole line, we'd love to host you, and we'd love to make you a part of the story. So
nice. Will you open all 7 Pinot Noirs for somebody?
Oh, we'll crush the Pinot Noirs.
Oh, I love it. Now I can see it. Cienega Valley. We're not as remote as Murphy's. I love it.
Look, I'll have you know, we are the same driving distance from San Francisco as Calistoga is. We're not that remote.
No, it's so not to get off on a side here, but living and working in Paso Robles, one of the things I noticed was when we first moved up to Paso, the entire tourist audience of Paso was 95%, Fresno and South, and more than likely Bakersfield and South. It was all Southern California. And then after 2015, there was even after the fires in 2018, there was a real interesting shift. And it moved more towards Northern California. And Paso probably became about 60% Northern California versus 40% Southern California.
Technically, Paso is Northern California, technically.
See, that's the thing, is Paso is right, like we're the DMZ. Like,
well, what I'm saying is we're
both Dodgers and Giants fans at the same time. Like nobody can decide what they want to be.
Yeah, no, that's a magnetic polarity you got to choose. Sorry.
Yeah, no, but most, like, if people from Southern California consider Paso to be Southern California, but what we're finding is a lot of people who, live in the peninsula, South Bay, Southeast Bay are starting to come down to Paso because it's about the same amount of time to drive as it would be up to Napa or to Sonoma, but you're less in traffic and the tastings are a little less expensive and you have a wider variety of grapes. And the Cienega Valley is, I mean, especially considering some of the names you mentioned, you have some really fantastic wineries over there. Do you guys have a like marketing collective or something that's kind of pushing the name out there?
We do, but I think the more salient question is that Scott brings up A's or Angels.
Yeah, there's no American League in Paso Robles.
I mean,
it's all National League, my friend. As the lone Angels fan in Paso Robles, I can vouch for that.
That's fair. I think that's fair. I mean, everybody knows the wine business is Dodgers, Giants, and 49ers, and the beer business is Raiders, Angels, Nays. I think that's basically
Lakers are in the wine business too. Actually, they're more in the celebrity tequila brand business. But
the Cavaliers are massive wine lovers.
The whole NBA has become. I mean, between Dwayne Wade, yeah, there's a big push.
These guys are all in.
Yeah,
and they're getting really knowledgeable too. I'm really impressed by it.
They're getting so knowledgeable that they're just starting their own labels.
Well, that's true. Yes.
Like Dwayne Wade.
Charles Woods. Well, Charles Woods is a football player, but
if you're doing it the right way, I'll support him all day long.
Nice. But it's great. Hollister's a charming little town. It's a couple blocks long. There's a nice hotel that's been renovated where I stayed, and there's a coffee shop on the corner and a few restaurants. And it is that quintessential old town charm of like antique stores and there's not a lot going on, but there's 2 blocks you can walk.
There are amazing wineries.
And you get in your car and drive and you've got all these amazing wineries.
So there was the comment that just came up from Scott about partial to rockstar winemakers. I encourage you all, so rockstar winemakers are not 100% mapped with quality. It's not it's a Venn diagram.
He meant literal rock stars.
Like, so the rocks, yeah. So
like Maynard James Keenan. That's who
Maynard James Keenan, yes. And James Suckling is a huge fan of his wines. They're very good friends. Nice guy.
But not the guy who played bass in Warrant, who makes wine in Temecula.
Okay.
What about that?
There is actually a really, really good rock star winemaker, which is Pink.
Yes.
Two Wolves.
The 2 Wolves.
We had her winemaker as one of our.
Did you? Oh, it's true.
We had Allison on with her own label.
But let's be fair. It's not Pink making the wine. It's Alicia Moore who makes the wine.
Alicia Moore makes the wine. Let's be real. Yes, Alicia Moore. But she did I think a couple of stages with Clos Rougeard. I mean, she took it seriously.
While she was on tour, she was studying for her WSET. I mean, you got to give props to someone.
Well, she'd already memorized the songs, so it was time for appellations. So
you have a lot of thinking time when you're doing the Sky ballet up in the rope up there. So yeah.
Honestly. All right.
Yeah. No, this was great. Thank you so much for being here, Christian. We appreciate it. This was truly one of the more memorable and interesting tastings we've had.
He says that to everyone.
But I really mean it. I really mean it. You're a great guy. Great guy.
No, yeah, I'll call you.
Exactly. Don't call me. I'll call you.
Yeah.
The wine showed beautifully, and what a great expression of a place. I mean, they really do, because this wasn't. We've done other tastings where it's always about the place and it's always about the winemaker, but there's always something unique about the great varieties that we have or the blends, and this was really about a place because the wines were just an expression of that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And Allison, you've been here, and I look forward to having you back, and I look forward to having all of you back, because with any project that is site-based, a visit is the whole thing. So I look forward to seeing you all if it becomes possible.
Yeah, no, I think you've opened a lot of people's eyes, not only to Eden Rift, but to the Cienega Valley in general. And, we can only hope that the Cienega Valley, well, I don't know if you want the Cienega Valley to continue to grow and more wineries, more winemakers to come into the area to utilize the grapes and really help spread the word of this very unique terroir that exists in this area.
I'm all in. I think what can be done down here is as good as can be done anywhere. And I think there are a lot of good reasons for it. And I look forward to having more and more really exciting projects happening down here. There's a lot of fun stuff.
Very nice. Very
So,
nice. All right.
great.
Well, thank
Thanks,
you so
guys.
much. I don't know if anybody wants to
off
unmute
and
themselves
ask
if they have any specific questions, or Christian, if you need to go, that's fine. But we're happy to,
Questions, comments, observations.
I will stop recording so you can, really.
Oh, don't do that. That's just going to make me act out.